Yeah. All right. So welcome to the Inspiration Series. I'm very excited to be here with Shelley Pomerantz, who has been a mentor and a dear friend for many years and has really helped shape the practitioner that I am today. And I'm so excited to have her on to discuss a really important concept that we hope will illuminate some healing just by watching this video. Okay. Yes. So before we get started, I want Shelley to introduce herself. Shelley is a psychotherapist who has been practicing for over 40 years. Yeah. She works with individuals and with couples, and she's seen it all. Shelley has, I'm sure in her 40 years, helped a lot of marriages through a lot of trauma, individuals through trauma, and has helped get people back on their feet. And I know, one of Shelley's passions, and she can speak a little bit more to it, is helping people when they are at the darkest point in their lives, heal in a way that can really start to transform their lives. Right? Yes. Am I right in that?
Absolutely.
And that is really such an important piece with the work that I'm doing with this community as well, is to understand that when you're given a major challenge or a major trauma, you have a choice. You always have a choice to fall down and get stuck and not grow, but you also have a choice to use that challenge to grow into an even better version of yourself. And that's what we're going to be talking about here in this interview today. And I want to ask Shelley questions like, in your 40 years of therapy, what do you see in terms of why people sink and why people swim? Okay. We're going to get into, I find that very interesting. And so that people can start to understand what types of characteristics or what types of practices they need in their life so they can be the ones to thrive from challenge.
Right.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Shelley, could you tell us before we start a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you found yourself on this path of healing?
Okay. And I started with Jodi saying that's one of the hardest questions anyone can ever ask me. I'll probably start with the fact that from the time I was incredibly young, people talked to me. Always talked to me. Okay. Always would come over and seek me out from the time I was really little on, and I never knew what it meant. I was called the quiet one in the family. I was always listening. So I have a very curvy road. Ended up in university not knowing what I wanted to do. Had a very interesting, challenging, loving, funny but crazy family. Ended up in psychology. And then the world started to make sense to me.
When?
In about third year university.
Okay. And the world still doesn't make sense to me, so.
And then I started to understand what it was I was supposed to be doing.
Okay.
Right. Parts of me that I was supposed to be using. It was a challenging path, but that's right. That's where I always had a ton of empathy, compassion, intuition, for people and their experiences.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into it. What we want to talk about today. Oh, I also just want to mention that Shelley is the co-author of a book called What Your Mother Never Told You About Love, Sex, and Power. You can find this book on Amazon and as well as on Shelley's website, and I'll share it in the show notes.
Yes, and it's at Type Bookstore if you live in Toronto.
Perfect.
Yes.
So what we want to talk about today is how to thrive from the challenges in our lives. And in order to do that, we need to come to some kind of acceptance around our emotional worlds.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I want Shelley to talk about something that she has termed the inconsolable spot in all of us, and how that allows us, first and foremost, what is the inconsolable spot? Let's start there.
Okay. So what you want to appreciate is our natural state of being is one of a capacity to change, adapt, thrive, and grow. And a lot of therapy is about trying to understand what stops people from growing and what stops people from changing, because change is our natural state and it's a good thing.
Okay.
So one of the emotions that have been identified that really, really stops people's capacity to change is the shame, what's called toxic shame. A deep, deep feeling that the There's I'm a bad person, I'm unlovable, I'm at fault, I'm not good enough. And so we are incredibly anxious there when you feel that insecure and that little in a relationship. What goes along
I'm going
with
to pause
that,
you for a second.
Sure.
When you talk about when you feel that little,
yes.
can you just expand on that?
Well, shame is a human experience, a human emotion, and the first conscious feelings of shame are around 3.
Okay.
So it's not that that's the only time it happens, but that's usually people have memories between 2 to 5 where they have an awareness that they're feeling really vulnerable and embarrassed and not good enough and insecure and bad or wrong, and they don't know really what they did.
Okay.
Right? So it's not I made a mistake and I did something wrong. It's a feeling of I am. Right?
And that is the difference between shame and say guilt per se.
Well, guilt's older.
Okay. Older in we feel that older.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from a young age, when we feel intense emotions, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yes.
Sometimes paired with that is this feeling that I am bad, I am wrong for feeling these things.
Yes. Like, so you are so along with shame is what I call the inconsolable grief state.
Okay.
So for people who have children, you will notice somewhere between 2.5 and 3, they all of a sudden get into a struggle with you. And they're trying to assert themselves or do something for themselves. You're trying to get out the door, and they have what people call a tantrum or emotional meltdown. So they're really upset, they're distressed, they're angry with you and what's going on in them, and they need you, but they're mad at you. Okay? So that's a moment of inconsolable. Okay?
And that's when it starts.
And that's when it starts.
So what I'm understanding is that when children are tantruming, we'll just call it that because we all can relate to that.
Yes.
They're so flooded with emotion.
Yes. It's
that
chaotic.
they, and that's a normal thing.
Yes.
Because they're just flooded with emotion. And in that state, they need you to comfort them, but they also don't want you at the same time.
Yes.
Okay. And parents and adults get this too.
Yes. So it's a feeling of come here and go away. It feels like you're being pushed and pulled. As a parent, you start to feel there's nothing you can do that's right.
When your child is tantruming.
When your child is tantruming, especially when they're upset with you. Okay. So that is often called a power struggle. So that happens. What happens with what I label the inconsolable grief spot is when there is a chronic pattern where in your distress or your push-pull or your struggle for independence with your parents, there's too much shaming, there's too much threat, there's too much punitive, and there's no, what doesn't happen after the upset is the parent doesn't come back to you as a kid recognizing that they have the power and you're little, and they have to help you come back to them and sort of reopen your heart because you're so hurt and threatened. Okay, so the more you're in a family where that emotional healthy habit doesn't happen, the more you're in a family of addiction, or early loss, there's a greater chance that then that inconsolable moment becomes a very defended, self-protected place within ourselves.
Okay, so I want to understand this because this is a lot.
It's a hard concept.
Most people,
yes,
and we're not stereotyping everybody, but most people when their child is tantruming,
yes,
they're quick to want to shut it down.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot of shame that they don't have a good child.
Exactly. And that's a problem too, which could be a whole other interview. But most people, when their child is intense, we get triggered. I find when my child's tantruming, I become like, right?
Yes.
And most people want it to end as quick as possible.
Yes.
But what I hear you saying is that when we try to shut it down, that can actually be harmful later in life?
What happens is it becomes, when you're trying to shut it down rather than help a child self-calm and come out of their inner distress.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a pattern of shut it down, when there's a message, this is unintentional.
Yes.
We're not meaning to do this as parents.
I understand.
When there's messaging that says, that's bad, that's wrong, when you're so uncomfortable as a parent in that level of upset within yourself, we as children will internalize that as, we're bad, we're wrong, we're alone, we have to hide and close this part of ourselves down.
I understand.
When that becomes a pervasive pattern,
Yes.
right? When there's not what we call the emotional repair or reconnection. So that happens.
Yes.
Right? But if you as a parent can come back to your child afterwards and say, I was very anxious there, I yelled at you, I'm sorry for that, if I scared you or hurt you, I want you to be able to tell me.
Okay.
And how can I help you come back? Because when you're inconsolable, your heart's closing. Right? It's self-protective.
Right. You don't
Yes.
feel like you want to connect with others.
Yes.
But when connection is really what you need.
Yes.
But something that I think is really important is that
Okay.
most people, when their children are tantruming, they don't like it. They're judging it.
They're highly anxious in it.
The parent is
Yes.
anxious when the child is tantruming.
Yes,
I think that's something we all
generationally,
agree. Yes.
that's what happens
It's
to
been
them.
taught.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, most parents also, when their child is tantruming or freaking out or having an emotional outburst, we are judging. We don't want them to be doing that.
Yeah, well,
right?
We're judging ourselves.
Or we're judging ourselves.
Yes.
What's wrong with me? That my kid's so crazy. Why can't I
Especially
keep it
if you're at
together?
the supermarket.
Right?
Right.
Even worse.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But and this is so important. This is what I want people
Yes.
to understand is that over time, that judgment of emotion, because really all it is emotion, correct?
Yes.
It's just emotion.
Yes. Yes.
And emotions are healthy and emotions are normal.
Yes.
Every child tantrums. Every
Yes.
child, even every adult, lots of adults tantrum too,
Yes.
because we feel.
Yeah, we're in an inner state of a tantrum is really an inner state of distress.
Okay.
When we're so flooded,
Yeah.
accurate,
Yeah.
with so many powerful, difficult, negative, challenging emotions,
Mm-hmm.
we can't manage it. So it's like this meltdown that we're having inside.
But it's normal, yes?
Yes.
And there's nothing dysfunctional about it, yes?
Yes, not when it's just momentary.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is key, people, really, because that can change, like, if people understanding this can change a lot.
Yes.
So I know I'm not always, by no means am I a perfect parent, but because I've been doing this work for a long time,
Yes.
and Shelley's guided me a lot through it, when my child is tantruming, I really try within myself to say, breathe, to myself.
Yes.
Right? Calm down, Jodi. This is normal.
Yes.
Nothing's wrong with him,
Yes.
and nothing's wrong with you.
Yes.
And what that then does is the subconscious judgment that most parents put on their child
Yes.
go away.
Yeah,
And when I'm able to do that, my child is able to calm down
Yes.
faster.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
But when my child is tantruming and I'm in judgment of it, what the hell's wrong with it? Oh my God, and what's wrong with me? And what's wrong? All those things,
Yes.
it just escalates more.
Yes. Yes.
So we as parents, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
is that we need to first and foremost take away the judgment from the tantrum.
Yeah, first and foremost.
Right? And know that it's normal.
Yeah, but we also have to first and foremost we have to recognize when we're in our own inconsolable grief, upset, distress state.
Right. Knowing that we have it too.
That we have
And
it.
not judge it in ourselves either.
Yes, and then begin to, it really, inconsolable is when we needed consoling the most.
So sorry.
Okay.
Inconsolable
is really when we were in need of consoling
the most.
When we're at usually our worst.
Okay.
It was not there.
And so because it wasn't there, We close our hearts when we need it.
Yes.
We're not able to be fully intimate when we need it.
Yes, we can't access that level of vulnerability because we have this idea that we're bad.
Yep.
We're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Look at our impact on our parents.
Right. We're making them angry. We're making them upset.
Right.
Something must be wrong with me.
Us. Yes.
And we carry that.
And we carry that
forever.
Primarily into the marriage. Because then what happens is we're so young when that part of our heart closes. Mm-hmm. We're so young when our wall in that defense, it's a starting spot. Okay. It's not the only time it happens, but it's the start. We don't realize we can change.
Right.
We are then looking, and the place we look for the consoling the most is in our marriage.
Yeah.
When we're distressed.
Mm-hmm.
But most often, you can be inconsolable at the same time in the marriage.
The two people in the marriage.
The two people in the marriage.
And so just like...
If I can make that jump.
Yeah. So just to sort of conclude this, so I think it's really important that for people watching, we have to stop judging our children when we're in these intense emotional states. I don't even want to use the word tantrum because I think that has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And that does lead to judgment.
Yeah.
But if we can see our children in intense emotional states and it's normal and it happens to everybody, then we judge less.
Yes.
We can stay calmer with our own, inner self-consoling.
Yeah.
But then because we're not judging and it's normal, we can teach them.
Yes.
This is normal. This is an emotional state. You're going to feel this a lot in your life.
Yes.
Let's get to know this place.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with you here.
That's right.
Okay.
So you're taking the shame and the isolation
out of it.
And it's the shame and the isolation because
that become pathological or later in life.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Until you end up feeling, when you feel that vulnerability, you don't feel vulnerable and empowered like you would as an adult. Mm-hmm. One of the signs you're in that inconsolable is your vulnerability. You feel really little. Mm-hmm. You feel disempowered.
Yeah.
You feel alone in your distress.
Yeah.
Right? People's effort to get close to you are often misunderstood and misperceived as control or, and you're looking for, I've used that in the first one, even though that didn't work out. Emotional perfectionism comes from, right? Emotional perfectionism is this young idea that when out of shame and inconsolable, when I'm lovable, when I'm safe, when I'm good, I will never, ever again feel bad, wrong, angry, distressed, alone. And so it stops us from being able to grow into greater adult vulnerability.
Right. Or when I have the perfect husband, the perfect car, the perfect job,
the perfect
when
body.
I have all these things, then I won't feel these things.
Yes.
Bullshit, right?
Bullshit. Yes.
Total bullshit.
Yes.
Because just like perfectionism is something that is completely unattainable, right?
Yes.
No one knows a perfect person.
Right.
Thinking that you're going to be happy all the time, or even having that as a goal.
Yeah, it's not the human experience.
Right. We feel. We are emotive.
Yes.
That's all needs to be welcomed.
Yes. And so what happens when we start to realize that when we're in one of our, so part of accepting it is one, getting to know ourselves when we are in the inconsolable, when the wall is up, when we're pushing and pulling our partner. One of the ways to notice inconsolable is when you're saying you never, you always, never. You're using absolute language because when you're a child, you think in emotional black and white, and it does feel like forever, right? But you don't understand is also the feeling of aloneness. The statement of it's not fair is a sign that you're in an inconsolable distress inside, because that's how you feel when you're little and you're this big and your parent is that big and they're fighting with you as if you're up here. It's not intentional. It's just part of what happens. And when there's not the parent has to be the one to come back and help the child to open their hearts and do the reconnection.
And this is
and then we're looking for our partner to do that for us rather than we know how to do it with them.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that this is key, because when you teach your children, even the language, have you come back? Right?
Yes.
Like I use this language with my son when
Yes.
he's in an emotional distress, and then I see he calms, and I'll say to him, are you back yet? And he'll either say yes or no.
Yes.
And then when he's fully back. Why I love that too so much is because it shows my child and even myself that it's just a state.
Yes.
Right? He was in an emotional state. He was feeling a lot.
Yes.
He's now back to center.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong. He
And
just
back,
goes
and back,
in and back.
And back to connection.
And back to connection.
Yes. So the feeling of personal power is when you know you can bring your wall down and you can reopen your heart.
Yeah.
Right? And that you're not, this other person over there can have their anxieties and their shame. And then there's room. The reason it becomes transformative is because there's now room for two people who are able to console and have enough compassion for self and other.
Yes.
That they can coexist in this state.
Yes.
And then they can start having more meaningful emotional dialogues of what it is that is not working or what they've outgrown. And so people leave at that moment and they make it that.
People leave, you're saying, in marriages.
Okay.
And at what moment?
They leave in the moment where they're stuck. There's such anxiety because nobody's held that space for them to come back, like you described with your son. So there's no trust of I can close and come back.
Okay.
So people let a marriage go because they don't know how to reopen their hearts.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is when we get to a point in a marriage, say we're unhappy and we're still looking outside to the marriage to make us feel whole.
Yes.
And it's not.
And less alone.
That's when people, and less alone.
Yes.
That's when people exit. Because they think that they're feeling that way because of the other person.
Yes.
When in fact you're saying that that's not the case.
That's not necessarily the case.
Not necessarily
so
the case.
The piece is you need to feel that you can come out of your own aloneness, just like you're
on
your own and have what I call the inner consoling, the inner connecting habits, so that the young, vulnerable part of you is getting inner emotional support from the adult you. As you open there, you can be in a difficult dialogue in a more meaningful, compassionate way.
Right, because you
can actually speak more truth and hear the other person. Right, because they're hurting also usually. Yes.
And you wouldn't do this with your children, but in an adult relationship.
Yes.
When you start to notice your own inconsolable spots, when you start to notice, like Shelley said, you're using language or thinking thoughts of, I hate my partner, he's always doing this, he's never home on time.
Yes.
You can say, light bulb, I must be in that inconsolable spot.
Yes.
And then you have a choice. You can either engage with your partner from that inconsolable spot, which will usually be destructive.
Yes.
Or you can try to soothe and calm down yourself, knowing you're in that spot, and then engage.
Yes.
So what I'd like to hear from you is, because I think easier said than done.
Very important, what you just said.
Yeah. But I want to know how do we do it?
Okay. Yeah. But taking care, what people sometimes think, if they acknowledge their own inconsolable, they think that invalidates the other person's bad behavior. It does not.
Okay, that is key.
Okay? And that people get really stuck because they're seeing it through an inconsolable blame lens. It is really, there's two parts.
Okay.
And what you said is really accurate. Learning how to recognize that you're in the worst part of your most alone thinking, and that has an effect in this fight that's going to, it's like fuel on the fire.
Can you give us an example?
Right. So when you said your husband's late, say he's chronically late, and you're doing, you're feeling so alone and you're carrying home, and no matter what you're doing, what you're saying, you feel it's falling on deaf ears, right? So you are naturally getting more distress inside. Of course. If you don't have any inner comfort habits, if you don't have a capacity to do what's called self-validation, that is, so you're looking for your partner to go, you're right, I'm wrong, I'm not here, and then I will do some meaningful change. But if you don't also aren't able to say, I'm sorry, which is the beginning of generating self-compassion.
I'm sorry,
In.
So using the example of my husband's late. He's always late.
And I'm getting into a rage.
Yep. It's now 6:05. You're supposed to be on 6 again.
Right. So you're going to take your breath.
Yeah.
And you're going to start some what's called compassionate inner self-consoling, compassionate self-talk that starts with, I'm sorry you're feeling so alone.
Okay.
So you're
inside. Okay.
So there's an inconsolable spot within the marriage, and there's also the inconsolable that's historical.
Mm-hmm.
Those two will start to heighten your emotion.
Okay.
If you start to give some of yourself what you need, the validation and the support of, I'm sorry you're alone, I'm sorry he's struggling to hear you, I'm sorry there's not been any change, I won't abandon you, I'm going to walk with you. And I know that a lot of people want to roll their eyes when they hear that kind of kindness. The truth is, you want to roll your eyes is because no one will talk to you that way.
Right.
Sadly.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to do it. And you have to learn how to do it, because if you're not doing it, it's because it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And even when it was there, it is something you have to continue. It's a practice that you have to build.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and it is a practice. And I can tell you, and Shelley and I both get this question a lot, is for people who don't have a self-compassion practice, at the beginning, it feels very wonky and false and inauthentic.
Yes.
And it's just because it's new.
Yes. Yes.
And we have to sort of keep showing up. So you going back to that example.
Yes.
The husband's late.
Yes.
I'm allowed to be angry, especially when that's a maybe. But Shelley's saying, instead of going right to the blame and the anger,
yes,
first go in. First validate what is sad and upset and disappointed in me because of the behavior.
Yes. And
help myself through it. What will that do? Why is that important?
What that will do is it'll take care of the historical inconsolable spot in you.
Okay.
Because when you're in the historical 5 and younger, we do not know we have power and impact. In our family, when our kids were growing up, we said feeling has no age.
Love that.
Right? And so when they would do or say something that could be hurtful, it could be hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know. Right? So the historical part of your inconsolable state doesn't know it has any power.
Okay.
Doesn't know it has any negative impact.
Mm-hmm.
It's only aware of its own distress.
Okay.
So by taking care of that part of yourself, your heart's a little more open.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not in you. You can start when he walks in the door with what are called emotional I statements. I'm really upset. This has been going on too long. I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do anymore, but we got to start talking about this differently. The quality of your upset, your anger, your distress comes from a very empowered emotional I.
Because you've calmed down the
historical
kind of place in you.
Yes.
And you're coming from still upset,
yes,
still angry.
But much more adult upset.
Yes. Then
right.
What would inconsolable upset look like?
An inconsolable?
Like if we didn't do the self-validation and the husband comes in and is late, what would that look like as opposed to
it would look like, I can't believe it. You don't care about me. You never think about me. You just are caught up in yourself. This isn't changing. If you love me, you would be doing this differently. It would have no awareness that perhaps the husband is stuck in whatever stuff he's stuck in and no more equipped to talk about himself emotionally or what stops him from changing.
Okay. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So you're still validated for your anger and your upset.
Yes.
It's just that the way you're going to communicate it when you've soothed that spot is going to be much more adult-like and empowering, less blaming than if you don't soothe that spot and you come at it. So when you see marriages, I mean, most people come in here because their marriages are falling apart.
Yeah, most marriages come to me because because I'm known for stuff that's what I get.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
So Shelley gets, I get the inconsolable sucks about the marriage is about to fail, and it's like sink or swim. And Shelley's able to help a lot of people through. Obviously, some marriages aren't meant to stay.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And is it through, obviously there's a lot of techniques, but is it through people understanding their inconsolable spots, learning how to self-connect to them, soothe them, and then speak and communicate from that more adult spot?
Yes.
Is that the main transformation that you see?
Well, what that does, it's one of the fundamental places where things transform, because when you're so upset, we look for Band-Aids. We look for what are called solution focus. Someone makes a promise they can't keep. They get into accusation, but when you start to actually deal with the both your own historical and where that is playing out within the marriage, it actually builds your capacity for greater vulnerability.
Okay.
And those are called emotionally focused, emotionally based conversations.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to fix something. You're trying to deepen your understanding. You're trying to deepen your own inner compassion. You're trying to heal a negative relationship with negative emotion, less shame, less judgment, less threat.
Yeah.
So you're actually building your capacity for greater intimacy, growth, and change, because marriages are always changing. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Your agreements change, you age, your sexuality changes, your kids move on. And if you don't have the capacity for those kind of hard, challenging conversations, it's hard to grow together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So to summarize, what I'm hearing is that everyone has this inconsolable spot. Everyone.
Yes.
Every human being has a point in their life where they feel emotionally flooded.
Yes.
Emotionally maybe crazy.
Distressed.
Right? Distressed.
Yes. Alone.
And when we label and judge ourselves in those spots, the anxiety increases.
Yes.
The tension and the conflict and the separation in relationship increases.
Yes.
And the shame and the loneliness and the isolation when we really need it increases.
Yes.
Okay, so the first step would be, when you are feeling intense emotions, mm-hmm. or you're watching or observing intense emotions in a partner or in a child,
yes,
to realize and accept that it's normal.
Yes.
Everyone has that.
Yes.
That in and of itself is transformational. Yes. I believe.
Yes. No, absolutely.
I see it with myself.
Yeah, what you're doing there is you're taking the shaming.
Yeah. That we do to ourselves for feeling what we're feeling.
And that was passed. Shame is one of the emotions that is like inherited.
Yeah.
It just is there within families mm-hmm. and people.
It's the most universal emotion, which is so sad.
Yes.
I learned from the Brene work is that shame is the most, not love, shame is the most universal emotion experience that we feel.
Yes.
So when we can shame or judge ourselves less in these intensely emotional spots, we can then shame and we then judge our children less, our partners less.
Yes.
And then we can actually grow more from these spots.
Yes. And then what happens is when you're not fighting to get away from such difficult feelings, you can actually have what I call emotional room for two. So both people being able to be anxious and distressed at the same time. Mm. Right? So when you're really, really inconsolable, we're fighting for the space. It's like me, mm-hmm. right? You don't get me. But when you have an understanding that I'm anxious, inconsolable, and threatened, and so is he, then we can stop and go, okay, how do we talk? How do we listen? How do we each self-calm? And so that we can get to some of the bottom of this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In a real way.
And that's what's transformational.
And do you find that a male inconsolable comes out differently than a female inconsolable?
I think we're all unique and inconsolable.
Okay. So it's not like a...
Well, I think, men when they're upset,
rage?
They can, but women rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
It's hard. Our rage is hard on them and their rage is hard on us.
Okay.
It's really.
So what
when,
we
when
do.
it's,
When
I'm not
we're
talking abuse. I'm talking moments of a rage reaction of distress.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Okay, but
Yes.
for ourselves,
Yes.
for us to illuminate when we know we're in inconsolable, we can be thinking things like all or nothing.
Yes.
I hate him all the time. He's this all the time. I'm this all the time.
Yeah, I never get.
I'll be lonely forever. I'll never be happy. Those absolutes are a good signal that we're in inconsolable. And thus it's our choice to either go in and soothe and calm ourselves, because nothing outside ever will.
No.
Right?
Not when you're closed.
Not when we're closed.
I mean,
no person will.
Want me to demonstrate it?
No. Yeah.
You want me to demonstrate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to turn this off. Okay.
So I'm going to demonstrate. This is, if Jodi's my partner, and I'm in the upset. When I'm inconsolable, what's happening is this adult self is barely here, and I can't. If you can see, really what's taking over is my younger 5 or 13-year-old who is really hiding behind a wall. I'm sort of behind a wall here.
Yeah.
So Jodi can make all these attempts, but it's going to bounce off that.
Okay. So basically you're gone.
I'm gone.
I can try to help you.
My idea is if when you as my partner are going, no matter what I do or say right now, nothing's working and I feel helpless, that's a sign that you're inconsolable now and I'm in mine.
Okay.
Right? And
no one can win.
And no one can win. So the work is we each have to be able to go inside and get the access to our most alone
spots,
distress spot,
which we all have,
and we're not bad, wrong, or crazy in that. It is an injury, and we are stuck and have no other resources, and it starts at such a young age that we don't realize we can do something for ourselves here. So that's why I call it inner consoling, because at 3 we need our parents to console us when we're most upset with them.
Yeah. And a lot of parents aren't.
And
not by any,
doing
anything wrong. We just don't have this language. We don't have this education.
Yes.
We don't have this awareness.
Yes. And then what they don't also know how to do, even when I had it, but I still, responded badly at times. But what the other piece of it is that we have to go back. We always have to go back, and you don't leave an upset in disrepair or disconnection. And when you feel that you have a way of going in, taking care of your own inconsolable, and then recognizing what upset you, but also where you may have had negative impact as an adult, because when we're inconsolable, we're also having negative impact. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
We can go back, and then we can talk it out and listen, and we can make room for both of us to be upset at the same time,
right,
without being in a power struggle.
And I think that's key with our kids too, to show them
I
have been consolable. I'm going to have times where I'm emotionally flooded and do things
and model
how
to come back.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's key.
It's key.
Okay.
And when you have that habit, then I can close, I can open, I know how to open, I know how to say I'm hurt, I'm scared, I'm upset.
Yeah.
Ask to be heard, be able to hear where maybe you were mean or harsh or, and acknowledge that. And then you can start the reconnection.
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge thing for people, because I think when so many people, when they're feeling frustrated or angry or intense, they really label themselves as crazy, all crazy, or all bad, or all flawed.
Yes.
And then they get stuck in it.
Yes.
Whereas when we're feeling, if we can just say, I'm feeling intense, I need to I need to do something for myself to soothe myself and calm myself down. There's nothing wrong with me.
Yes.
That allows us to then get to the self-soothing. But when we're so stuck in the judgment of what we're feeling, the anxiety just rises and rises and rises. We can't even get to the soothing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So taking the judgment out is key.
Yes.
Knowing that emotions are common. There's no such thing as emotional perfectionism.
Yes.
Just like there's no perfectionism.
Well, it's a sign that you're in your inconsolable
state. If we think we should always be happy all the time or never angry.
Yeah, that's not the human experience.
It's not which is so important.
Right. We have a shame-based relationship with negative emotion.
Mhm.
That is, so
We as a society.
as society.
Yes.
So if I'm angry or I'm deprived or I'm resentful, I must be bad or wrong or not good enough. Rather than fear, if we didn't have fear, we wouldn't be alive. If we didn't have resentment, we wouldn't realize we were stuck in a routine that's not working.
Mhm.
If we didn't have anger, we wouldn't correct any violations that are going on in our lives there. So this allows us to have a much healthier relationship with the negative states.
Mhm.
So we're less fearful.
I love that, less shame-based association with the negative states.
Yes.
The negative states are states, and they're states.
Yes.
That was really helpful for me at the beginning when I was doing this work, and I realized this is a state, Jodi, this isn't you.
Yes.
But when I judge it as me, then I think I'm crazy, I'm awful, I'm fucked up, I'm flawed, and then it all just blows up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you one more question
Sure.
to close it all up. It's an intense one.
Yes.
What do you believe is the purpose of life?
The purpose of life?
Yeah, the purpose of life. Why are we here?
In
In your opinion?
my opinion?
Yeah.
I think we're here to love, to learn how to be in relationship, I think everyone has a purpose,
Mhm.
and a way of contributing. I think, as humans, we have choice, and to learn to choose wisely
Okay.
and lovingly.
Amazing. So
Right.
love.
Yeah, really love. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anything else last you want to share before we finish?
I'm really aware that this level of this kind of language and work is often new and challenging. It's I just think essential for people because I see too many people leave or give up at the point of greatest learning that can help them open, heal their family of origin history. And it doesn't mean people stay together, but they really can choose wisely, whether there's now something to build on, something new, or they may have worn each other out, but when they leave with greater compassion, less unresolved grief, less bitterness. If you have children, better habits for your family, and they can move on and thrive better in relationships. So I just think it's really important to know it's like we all have blind spots, and that Inconsolable really will show you where your blind spots are, so you can keep growing.
And the only way we can grow and change into those blind spots is if we take off the judgment lens.
Yes, and the shaming lens.
On both ends, with
Yes.
ourselves, with our partner.
Yes.
Right? It's
Yes.
the only way.
Yes.
And really know that we all have stuff there. But when we investigate it and we bring love to it, we change ourselves. Like Shelley said, marriages don't always last, but at least the relationship will be healthier,
Yes.
Stronger,
Yeah.
More compassionate.
Yes.
Okay.
And a better leaving, if that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
One last question, just because
Sure.
I find it so interesting. When you see marriages at their, about to break,
Yes.
and I'm sure lots have in your counsel and
Yeah.
lots haven't.
Yeah.
What do you think what makes the difference? Like, what makes the difference when you see, two marriages falling flat on their faces? When you meet with a couple for the first time, do you kind of know intuitively?
Yeah, I call it the emotional bones of a relationship. There's a glue, a love, even if people have been awful with each other. So when that's there's an awful lot that, and maybe they can't revive it, but there's great potential.
Okay.
And when that's not there and people are not quite sure what brought them together, I can help them come out of their inconsolable, their mutual anxieties, really talk and listen. And then I say, once you're in more adult self, you can see, is there a new energy for the two of you? Is there enough here to build something new or not? Right. So that you're not leaving out of withdrawal and distress. You're leaving, or you're staying or leaving because now you can make a really good choice for yourself.
Yeah. But you do see that certain couples have this sort of
Glue. I call it
glue and others don't.
Yeah, or it's not as strong.
Or it's not as strong. And that glue, regardless of what traumas happen, usually will be the thing that allows people to thrive, even if they've done all this work.
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, honey. Always a pleasure.
All right.